Thanks for wasting our time today. I understand this is a marriage proposal, but we do not approve. Please give up and go home now. When we went to my boyfriend's family home to announce our engagement, his mother glared at me, speaking down to me like this. I knew from the start that his parents didn't like me. But I can't back down here. I steeled myself and proceeded to introduce myself to my future in-laws. My name is Marina. I'm 26 years old and work in the General Affairs Department of a manufacturing company. I have a boyfriend, who I've been dating since last year. His name is Travis, he's 3 years older than me and we work in the same department. He has a soft expression and his kindness shines through when he smiles. That's what made me fall in love with him. Since we both live alone, we often visit each other's places and enjoy our dates on the weekends. We've built a happy relationship. My parents' home is nearby, so I often take Travis to their place to hang out. My parents really like Travis, and when he visits, they always serve up great meals than usual. Travis gets along well with my father, and I thought that everything would be fine even after we got married. However, Travis has always been reluctant to introduce me to his parents. When I asked him why, he looked troubled. Could you wait a little longer? My parents are nothing like yours. I wish I had been raised by people like your parents. When he said this, he looked somewhat sad. I wondered if he might be on bad terms with his parents. I decided to wait until he was ready to talk about it. I wasn't in a rush to get married, and I thought it would be best for him to tell me when he was ready. But life doesn't always go the way you want it to. One holiday, while Travis and I were heading to our favorite restaurant, a surprising turn of events unfolded. As we were guided to our seats by the staff, Travis suddenly looked shocked and began to fidget uncomfortably. What's wrong? I asked. He was at a loss for words and could not answer properly. Well, he said, looking away. Wondering if I had done something wrong, I felt anxious. Just then. Oh, isn't that dear Travis? I haven't heard from you in a while. I was wondering what you were up to. A woman in her 50s approached our table, chatted amiably with Travis, and then looked at me appraisingly. She had distinctive downturned eyes that made it feel as though she was glaring at me. Perhaps her hair, tied neatly at the back, accentuated the slant of her eyes. As I returned her gaze with a puzzled look, she let out a dismissive chuckle. Are you really hanging out with a country hick like her, Travis? You're such a good kid. If you don't like it, you have to tell her straight. Otherwise, girls like her won't get the hint. At her words, Travis's face tensed up. He glared back at the woman and defended me. I won't tolerate any insult to her. But the woman, giving me a pierced look, said, It's a pity my boy's been fooled by a girl like you. Leave Travis alone right now. Then she headed toward the cashier, paid her bill, and left the diner. What was that about? I asked, looking at the departing woman. Travis responded with a weak voice. That's my mother. A few years ago, because of her, I had to break up with someone I was considering marrying. She said she didn't want to get married if it meant dealing with a mother like that. So that's why she had such an attitude. Yeah, if you decide to continue being with me, there will be a lot of complications. Should we break up here? Don't worry, I won't bring my personal issues into work, and I'll make sure you won't have any trouble. Travis looked pained. I see. But I still want to be with you, Travis. Do you really want to break up with me? Travis looked shocked at my words. You know I have such a mother. If you marry me, it will be a burden on you. I don't mind. I think that's part of marriage. And we don't have to live with her, right? We will never live with her. If she insists, I'll request a transfer at work and we can move far away. Travis looked at me very seriously. I returned his gaze with a smile. Then I feel reassured. Is it strange if I propose to you?
Are you sure?
Yes, of course. I want to live with you in the future, I said, feeling heat spread through my body out of embarrassment. I was sure my face was turning red. I feel a bit upstaged, but I'm really happy. I want to be by your side for the rest of my life. Finally, Travis smiled, and I felt relieved. Afterward, Travis and I decided to introduce ourselves to my parents. They were delighted and eagerly asked how we had decided to marry. This meant I had to talk about my soon-to-be mother-in-law. We tried to sidestep the conversation, pretending to be shy. We were hoping to divert questions about my mother-in-law, but my mother wouldn't allow it. Have you already introduced yourself to Travis's parents, or is that still to come? Travis and I were taken aback by her question. No, I don't plan on informing our parents about us getting married. What? Why not? Travis's answer caused my mother to gasp in surprise. Because I'm sure my parents would never approve of our marriage. At this point, my father gave us a stern look. That's not acceptable. Marriage is a union of two families. Your mom would be devastated if she found out you were married without her knowledge. You both should at least greet them once. If they still refuse, come talk to us. We'll certainly help you out then. My father's words were strong and reassuring. However, Travis gave me a look of concern. I'm fine. I said this with a smile, hoping to ease his worries. I thought, if we couldn't overcome this hurdle, we wouldn't be able to find our true happiness together. Later, Travis informed his parents that I would be coming to greet and introduce myself. They didn't seem welcoming, but he managed to arrange the meeting anyway. Travis's father was a CEO, and they lived in a large house. The yard was also expansive. When I stepped in, a large dog started barking. Travis approached with a smile and petted the dog's chin. The dog quieted down and let me pet him too. While we were playing with the dog, the front door opened and his parents came out. His mother, with her sharp gaze, exuded an intimidating aura, and his father, equally high-handed, looked down upon me. Don't touch our dog! You're disgusting! Those were the first words out of his father's mouth. Without even a greeting, he started berating me. I felt extremely uncomfortable. How dare you speak to her like that? If you keep acting this way, I won't hesitate to cut ties with you. When Travis said this, his parents glared at me, but didn't make any further unpleasant remarks. They invited us into the house. I found it a bit strange. Travis, with just one look at his face, you would think he's a kind person because of his gentle eyes. I thought he took after his father because his mother had upturned eyes, but he didn't resemble his father at all. Things like skipping generations in genetic traits are not uncommon, and there are plenty of kids who don't resemble either parent. So, I thought maybe it's best not to delve too much into that matter. I entered the house, and as I was looking around, a middle-aged man in a suit appeared. Welcome home, young master. Upon seeing Travis, he bowed to greet him. His kind smile was contagious, and I found myself smiling back at him. It's been a while, Mr. Williams. You're all grown now, young master. Mr. Williams looked at Travis and smiled warmly. It was the first time I saw Travis genuinely smile since we arrived at this house. He then introduced me to Mr. Williams. This is Mr. Williams, my father's right-hand man. To be honest, he's more like a father to me than my own. My father never showed much interest in me, so Mr. Williams often took care of me. You're the boss's son. I was just doing what was expected of me. But you've always had a soft spot for me, haven't you? I have to say, I like you more than my father. Travis chuckled. Seeing him laugh innocently felt like a first. As we were talking, my mother-in-law emerged from a room in the back of the house. Marina! What are you doing? Come here right now! She shouted angrily. She glared at Mr. Williams. What do you think you're doing, slacking off from work? How many times have I told you to stay away from Marina? I'll make sure my husband hears about this. You better head off to work. I understand. I'll do as you say. With that, Mr. Williams nodded and left the room. As an office worker who only does clerical work, I wonder if being the CEO's secretary means you have to visit the CEO's house and be at the beck and call of the CEO's wife? Travis glared at his mother and protested. Why do you always treat Mr. Williams so harshly? How can you be so rude to someone who's been working so hard for Dad? Quiet! You should just do as your parents say. I'll deal with that man. Now come over here. Following my mother-in-law, Travis and I moved to the living room. Travis and I sat on the sofa across from my in-laws, and my mother-in-law was the first to speak. Thanks for wasting our time today. I heard you two are here to greet and introduce yourselves to get our blessings, but we don't approve of you two getting married, so just give up and go home. I was prepared for the snide remarks. This didn't bother me at all. No, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule for us. Travis and I love each other. It's natural for two people in love to get married. Don't you agree, father-in-law, mother-in-law? I replied with a composed smile. However, my mother-in-law gave a deliberately exaggerated sigh. Ugh. You don't understand anything about marriage, do you? Since our last meeting, I've looked into you. You're a mediocre woman who, after graduating from a nothing special, average university, joined a small-scale company. And despite your lack of remarkable skills, you've managed to ensnare my Travis, haven't you? Do you really think a woman like you is good enough for our family? Good match is what's important in marriage. Mom, Marina, and I work at the same company. We work the same way, in the same place. If Marina is incompetent, then so am I. We're a good match. Travis, you're different. There must have been a reason for you to lower your standards and join that company. This woman only had that option available to her. And besides, my mother-in-law, smirking, turning a mocking gaze at me, and continued. Seems like you come from a poor family, after our money, are you? At my mother-in-law's insinuation, I felt my blood boil. I had resolved not to let anything she said upset me, but when she brought up my parents, I couldn't hold back my anger and found myself retorting. Please don't just assume we're poor. What's wrong with calling a spade a spade? Living in a rundown 50-year-old house, driving a car that was released 10 years ago. Did I hit a nerve because I'm spot on? This is why I can't stand poor people. My family home was built by my great-grandfather, who was a carpenter. It's precious to us. As for the car, we simply like it and have kept it running smoothly. There's no reason for us to be labeled as poor. You did your research, didn't you? You must know what my parents do for a living. Yes, I know your father is a university professor and your mother is a high school teacher. I acknowledge they have respectable jobs. However, there's too much of a disparity between our families. Listen, Travis is slated to take over his father's business someday. Don't think for a second that the daughter of mere educators can marry my son. With that, my mother-in-law cackled loudly. That's when Travis stood up. His face was transformed into something I'd never seen before, a scary expression replacing his usual gentle smile. "It was a waste of time trying to talk to you people. I'm cutting ties with you. There's no way I could forgive you for bad-mouthing someone I care about. Marina, let's go. There's no point in trying to persuade them anymore." Travis grabbed my hand and we left their house. "I'm sorry. I'll explain to your parents that we couldn't even have a conversation with them. Please don't say you won't marry me." I could only nod in response to Travis' desperate plea. Travis and I went straight to my parents' house and told them what had happened as his parents. Travis had anticipated this might happen and had brought along a voice recorder. All of my mother-in-law's snide remarks were recorded, and after listening to them, my parents pondered a bit and then said, "Sure, the way his mother spoke was not nice, but you two are giving up too easily. We'll try to work out a strategy, so you go ahead and keep making your wedding preparations. If you, as adults, have decided to marry, you don't need parental approval. Still, it would be best if you could get Travis' parents' blessing for your marriage." As my mother calmly stated her opinion, Travis and I felt our spirits settle and we managed to nod in agreement. We decided to leave matters concerning Travis' parents to mine and discussed our future together. 1 month later, my parents called us, and Travis and I visited my family home. As we entered, we found Travis' parents and Mr. Williams seated around a small table. When we joined them, the room became rather crowded. I thought Travis' parents might start making snide remarks again, but they sat quietly. It was my father who filled us in on what had been discussed in our absence. Travis's parents looked into us, and so, we decided to investigate them in return. His parents married 30 years ago after his mother became pregnant. At that time, his father had just started his company. Mr. Williams, who was an ordinary employee at that time, had also supported his father devotedly. As my father was explaining, Travis interrupted. "All that is common knowledge in our family. Mr. Williams started as an ordinary employee but was promoted to the position of my father's personal assistant in recognition of his achievements. My mother raised me almost single-handedly while my father was struggling with managing the company. It seems Mr. Williams supported not just my father but my mother as well." As Travis finished speaking, my father nodded. "Mr. Williams indeed supported your family in a very dedicated manner. Now, the topic is going to shift a bit. I am a genetic researcher at the university. Genetically, children inherit half of their DNA from each parent. Even if the child and parent look very different, they are certainly inheriting half of their genes from each parent." "What are you getting at?" Travis threw a questioning look in the middle of my father's explanation. I also wondered why my father started talking about this. My usually mild-mannered father had a stern look on his face as he addressed Travis's parents. "Please, hear me out. I hired a detective to conduct a background investigation on your parents. Your father works diligently, and Mr. Williams was always there to support him. Your mother is devoted to housework, so much so that it was inspiring. However, when I looked at your pictures, something seemed odd. Neither of your parents have a widow's peak, but you, Travis, do. This trait is known as a dominant trait, meaning a child with a widow's peak can only be born to a parent with the same feature. Moreover, don't you think Travis looks a lot like Mr. Williams? Particularly the drooping eyes and the widow's peak. So, I thought maybe, and I called your parents here to talk." After my father finished his explanation, Travis looked at his parents and Mr. Williams in astonishment. Unlike my father, I am a French teacher like my mother, and I am good at French. I never noticed the difference in their foreheads, even if I did. I am no expert in genetics. After a period of silence, Travis's father began to speak. 30 years ago. I was so consumed with my work, I neglected my family entirely. That was when my wife told me she was pregnant. I had been hiding about my infertility from my wife. I was angry about my wife's affair, and she was angry that I had kept my infertility a secret. After a big fight, I told my wife that if I were to raise her child as my own, I would forgive her infidelity. In turn, she said that if I forgave her infidelity, she would forgive me for hiding things. Then, I made Mr. Williams my personal assistant and kept him under watch to prevent my wife from continuing the affair. After Travis's father spilled everything, he sat there with a blank face as if his soul had left his body. On the other hand, his mother began to sob. I loved Mr. Williams. I wanted to raise Travis with him. Travis is a treasure that I created with a man I truly loved. I can't hand him over to a woman I don't know. I absolutely will not allow this marriage. As his mother wiped her tears and glared at me, Travis gave her a contemptuous look. I've always been aware that I wasn't loved by you, Dad. I felt my mother's abnormal obsession towards me. I often wished that Mr. Williams had been my real father. But what's this now? You three are disgusting. Mom, I no longer want to think of you as my parent, and even if Mr. Williams is my biological father, I won't recognize you as such. I won't forgive any of you. I will cut ties with you all and marry into Marina's family. As Travis uttered those words, his mother rose and began to cling to Travis, crying. That's not allowed. Travis is mine. I won't hand him over to anyone, especially not to some commoner. Let's live together, then I will allow your marriage. So, don't say you're marrying into another family. As Travis's mother grabbed his arm, I swatted her hand away. Ma'am, can you please stop? Travis is clearly uncomfortable. Do you understand how much he has been hurt and troubled because of you? Probably not. Because in the end, all you care about is yourself. If you only betrayed your husband to be with Mr. Williams and continued to deceive Travis, I wouldn't say anything. Because that's a matter between just the three of you. But for you to interfere with Travis's happiness? I'm not gonna sit here and let that happen. Why don't you put his happiness first? If you don't like me, that's fine. But if you just want to manipulate him as you please, you're failing as a mother. From now on, I will make Travis happy, so don't get in our way. After I blurted that out, his mother began to cry again. She was cursing at me, calling me a cruel woman, but Mr. Williams was comforting her. And we decided to discuss future matters at a later date. A few days later, Travis's parents officially apologized to my husband and me, and my parents. They accepted our marriage, and Travis and I officially turned in our marriage certificate. Travis moved into my house. In the end, it seemed Travis's father could not forgive his wife's infidelity. Too much time had passed to ask for compensation, but they divorced and split their assets. Mr. Williams also resigned and moved far away with Travis's mother. His mother's luxurious lifestyle came to a sudden end, and she was forced to live the impoverished life she had always looked down upon. She occasionally sends letters asking Travis for financial help, but he ignores them entirely. Travis has severed ties with his father because they are not blood-related. He has no intention of becoming Mr. Williams's adopted son now, so legally, he remains to be the son of his father. They seem to have come to terms with this. Once Mr. Williams resigned and Travis's mother was no longer around to support him, Travis's father's company performance plummeted. He resigned from his president's position, and no one knows where he went after that. A year after marrying Travis, I saw that his parents' house had been put up for sale. We had a wedding ceremony, but because of Travis's complicated family issues, we kept it small with only close family and relatives. Even so, it was a memorable occasion, and I was satisfied. Now, we have been blessed with a beautiful daughter, and I have quit my job to devote myself to raising her. My parents occasionally visit and help take care of our daughter, which is a great help. Travis and I plan to support each other and raise our daughter with love.
Wait a minute! You stupid wife! Remember this!
Of course, I have no intention of remembering. Behind me, a noisy woman is clutching her stomach and desperately shouting at me, but I don't care. Besides, this is the first time I've run this hard since becoming an adult. Come to think of it, I was pretty fast on my feet during my school days. That thought crossed my mind. I'm out of breath and it's hard, but strangely, I feel exhilarated. I'm free from now on. My name is Lisa. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I work in the administrative department of a major corporation. It's not that I have high expectations, but before I knew it, I was not just in my 30s but almost in my 40s. It's not that I don't want to get married, but as my years of service have increased, thankfully so has my salary, and I can live alone if necessary. However, there are times when I feel lonely.
It seems like it's time to seriously consider getting a cat.
While lost in thought during work.
Lisa, you're daydreaming again during work. It's not a good example for your subordinates.
Ryan, a salesperson from a client company, peeked at my face and spoke to me. He's about the same age as me, but looks so young that he could pass for his 20s. My colleagues also said he was handsome.
Spring makes me sleepy.
Let me guess, you ate too much lunch? We've known each other for a long time, so we can joke like this. Watching our interaction, some colleagues teased us, suggesting we should date. I just brushed it off, but then an unexpected event happened.
Lisa, I want you to marry me.
Ryan, who had been waiting for me at the exit after work, suddenly asked me out for a meal. I thought it was his usual joke, especially since we had been drinking, but it seemed he was serious. To be honest, I was a little interested in him, so I was happy to hear that. I asked him to wait a bit for my answer, and then I formally accepted. After we started dating, I began calling him Ryan by his first name. He always brought up new topics and was a great conversationalist, typical of the top salesperson. Since we knew each other from before, we never really had a big fight, and 6 months into the relationship, he proposed to me at a place with a beautiful night view. Of course, I said yes. Little did I know that this man would turn out to be incredible in ways I never imagined. After getting married, my husband was transferred to a department with more business trips.
The salary will be higher, and we'll have a more comfortable life.
I wanted him to stay by my side, but it seemed he had long wished for this transfer, and he was happy about moving to his desired department. He was away from home for half of the month, and even though we were newlyweds,
maybe I should really get a cat.
I started to seriously consider it. Having lived alone for a long time, I had no trouble spending time by myself. With my husband away, there was no need to cook elaborate meals. There were days when I just made simple dishes for dinner. The married life I had imagined when I was single was far different from reality, leaving me feeling a bit empty. My husband earned well, but as we didn't have children, I felt there was nothing for me to do at home, so I continued working.
Aren't you going to have kids?
At a drinking party, a colleague with children sympathetically asked me, but I just laughed it off with a haha. I wanted children sooner rather than later, considering my age, but it seemed my husband felt differently. He said he wanted to cherish our time as a couple, which made me a bit happy, but I also felt anxious. Someone who trampled on my feelings like this intruded. One day, as usual, my husband was on a business trip, and I was quietly having a drink alone when the doorbell rang. Seeing the person on the screen, I couldn't help but let out a sound. I couldn't just ignore it, so I let the person into my room.
Please call before you come, Mia. How many times do I have to tell you?
Not sure if my reluctance showed on my face. You always look so gloomy, Lisa.
Oh, Ryan is not home again? You guys aren't young anymore. Shouldn't you be more worried about having kids?
The one who would say such rude things so nonchalantly was my husband's mother, Mia. She barged into the room and finished off the bottle of wine I had opened. Then, without asking, she opened the refrigerator.
Oh, there's some expensive-looking meat.
I can take this, right, Lisa? It was an A5 grade steak I had bought as a treat for myself to cook the next day. Mia, my mother-in-law, would come to our house and pester me for things.
What? No, of course not.
I realized my mistake the moment I said it. Mia's face turned sour quickly.
Huh? Living a life of luxury with my son's earnings, and you can't even share a bit? Sit down.
Once she started, Mia was unstoppable, lecturing me endlessly. She would go on and on about how she raised her son with care, how she was strict to get him into a top university. She detailed the expenses of getting her son through college. Mia said these things, but I heard that it was my father-in-law who worked hard and earned money while Mia had always been a housewife. Maybe her frugality contributed to that. I've been subjected to this talk annoyingly many times. I've tried pretending not to be home, but she would knock on the door until I came out. Sometimes, I had to call my father-in-law to come and get her. Every time I saw him, he looked tired.
Come on, let's go home. Enough is enough.
Watching Mia being dragged away by him, I deeply realized that marriage isn't always about happiness. By the way, the steak was bought with my own money. As if I'd give it to Mia. Every time she appeared, I was glad we weren't living together. Then, one day it happened. I was relaxing on the sofa, sipping coffee on my day off, when…
What? What did you just say?
I couldn't hide my shock at my husband's words.
I said, divorce. My parents, they got divorced.
Tying his tie, my husband told me calmly. According to him, my father-in-law's anger towards Mia finally reached its limit. Of course, Mia refused the divorce. In the end, it turned into quite a battle, each hiring lawyers. The amount Mia demanded for the divorce was much higher than the norm, but my father-in-law agreed to it just to get away from Mia. My father-in-law's family was wealthy, and he himself was an executive of a large company. With that, Mia must have gotten quite a sum.
He always looked so worn out. It's good he's free from Mia now.
As I was thinking this, my husband said,
So, the house was Dad's, and he's already put it on the market.
What will Mia do now? As I was thinking, the doorbell rang. Not Mia again, I thought, but my guess was wrong. A uniformed delivery person stood there. I thought it was a courier and opened the door, but Mia was there with the delivery person. Confused.
Where should we take the stuff?
The delivery person asked, and Mia barged in. Please take it to the back room, she said. Thanks for agreeing to live together, Ryan.
You're such a wonderful son of mine.
I was completely left out. In no time, the spare room, which had been used for storage, was filled with her belongings, and it was transformed into Mia's living space.
What? I haven't heard anything about this. I can't just accept sudden cohabitation.
If it were the kind Mia, it wouldn't be a problem. But this Mia was different. As I desperately refused, both of them looked at me with puzzled faces.
Isn't it all the same whether we live together now or in the future? You'll take care of Mom then, Lisa.
My husband said such an absurd thing. Apparently, taking care of Mia was a foregone conclusion for me.
Absolutely not. This is ridiculous.
I'll divorce. This is crazy. Stop making fun of me.
To this, they both started laughing at me as if I was a joke. Divorce? Try it. You'll be the pathetic one, you know? You should be thankful I even married a leftover like you. Hit with such harsh words, I felt everything go dark before my eyes. My husband said he married me for his social status. As he got older, more people around him were married, and marriage was a status symbol in society. He chose me because of my decent looks and good reputation, and he thought I seemed obedient, he said with a laugh at the end.
I'll never sign the divorce papers. Well, I'm off on a business trip again, so I'm leaving now.
Saying this, he left the house humming, leaving behind both me and the detested Mia. Watching me stand there dumbfounded, Mia said, "How pitiful, a woman unloved by men." She retorted, laughing at me.
You're one to talk, having been divorced yourself.
That's what I said. Mia screamed, but I couldn't afford to waste my energy on this woman. I locked myself in my room, pondering how to get a divorce in my favor. I searched the internet, but my husband hadn't done anything particularly wrong. At most, he had the crazy Mia.
Not even cheating.
As I thought this, Mia banged on my room door so fiercely I thought it would break.
Come on! Get out here now!
Wondering what was happening, I came out to find several delicious-looking dishes on the table. Thinking Mia had prepared the meal, I sat down.
Well, she's a bit nice after all.
Just then.
Hey! What are you sitting down for? Pay up!
I looked where Mia was pointing and saw a confused delivery man at the door. Dumbfounded by Mia's stupidity, I said, "I won't pay for it." Then I returned to my room and locked the door. She screamed outside for a while, but eventually quieted down. Seems like she paid for it herself. Good. From then on, Mia and I hardly exchanged words. I've heard of married couples living like strangers, but what was this relationship? I even thought about such trivial matters. My husband's visits home became even less frequent, and when he did come home, he and Mia would be having a party-like time. I was quietly preparing for divorce. The more I researched, the more shocking secrets about my foolish husband came to light. He was truly Mia's son. A real piece of work. Mia never cooked, relying on delivery for every meal. And she ordered a lot. Given her large size, it made sense. Once, I prepared a meal for Mia, but she threw it away, plate and all. When I found it, I was so frustrated I cried. Mia had always been stingy with money since the beginning of our marriage. Extremely reluctant to spend more than necessary. She had no problem coveting others' belongings. Once, after a bath, I was eating ice cream when she barged in unannounced.
I'll take one of those,
she said, and shamelessly ate one of the 2 ice creams in the package. A greedy and unpleasant person. I continued this life for nearly a year. Although Mia and I were living together, we barely saw each other, so it wasn't too hard. I considered moving out, but I didn't want to be seen as running away. More than that, the thought of the 2 of them falling into hell made me giddy.
Mia.
One day, when I suddenly spoke to her, Mia involuntarily shuddered. What do you want? How about we go out for dinner together? Unlimited high-end lobster. Plus, it's unlimited time right now. At my suggestion, Mia, always eager for a meal, was immediately interested. I'll go, but you're paying, right? As always, she was presumptuous, but I answered with a smile. Of course. Once Mia knew it was on me, she began ordering one dish after another at the restaurant. I'll take 5 servings of premium lobster, same for shrimp and scallops. And then, like a black hole, Mia devoured the meat continuously. Other customers glanced and whispered, laughing at her. I get it. She's practically a cow herself. Here's where my plan hit a snag. I intended to leave Mia at the restaurant and return home early, but she protested.
Eating alone is embarrassing.
That's what she said. I think you're embarrassing enough already. In the end, Mia, taking advantage of the unlimited time offer, silently ate meat for 3 hours. She even ate the meat I grilled, leaving me with only about 5 pieces. After 3 hours of that, when it was time to pay, the server said with a forced smile, We look forward to seeing you again. But his eyes weren't smiling. He probably hoped never to see such a customer again. Well, that was an okay restaurant. I was infuriated that her first comment was that, after eating and drinking on someone else's dime. I was thinking of where to take her next when suddenly, ouch! Mia collapsed, sweating profusely. And in obvious pain. What happened? Are you giving birth?
Don't joke at a time like this.
The cause of her stomach pain was obvious. In extreme pain, Mia panicked.
Hurry, this is serious. Call an ambulance, quickly.
I thought the real problem was her head and stomach, but to avoid further embarrassment from her loud cries, I did as she said and called an ambulance. Fortunately, it arrived in about 15 minutes. By then, Mia had quieted down, but she was crouching and holding her stomach in pain. What happened? The paramedic asked. My stomach hurts. Mia could barely speak. We'll take her to a nearby hospital. Are you her daughter? Son's wife? Please come with us. The paramedic asked me, but I replied. Son's wife? No. I know her, but she's practically a stranger now. I think her stomach pain is because she ate meat nonstop for 3 hours at that lobster place. I explained emotionlessly. 3 hours. I see. The paramedic's face twisted in disbelief. Well, I have urgent matters to attend to, so I'll leave now. Her son is around, so please contact him. I said and ran off as fast as I could. From behind,
Wait! You stupid wife, remember this!
I heard Mia shout, but of course, I had no intention of remembering. I hurried home. When I arrived, the movers I had arranged were there too, and I left the house with my packed belongings. A few hours later, my mobile phone was bombarded with calls from my husband. The hospital must have contacted him.
Hey Lisa! What are you doing? Mom is in trouble.
What am I doing now? I'm sitting on my new sofa, elegantly drinking coffee. I retorted.
Don't joke! I came home and your stuff is gone, and there's a divorce petition. I'll never sign it.
My husband was furious, but I said, then it'll be through lawyers. You should receive the official documents soon. You have plenty of women, so it shouldn't be a problem, right? As I laughed, he whispered, Huh, in a small voice. I had hired a detective agency to gather information on my husband for a favorable divorce. And what a surprise! One evidence after another came out. I quickly found out about a woman he was involved with in Chicago. Just as I thought that was it, there was a woman in Los Angeles, then New Orleans, and recently Denver. The number was so high that my female lawyer and I joked. "Where do you think the next one will be?" "I bet Atlanta." We even had the luxury to guess the next affair location. After all this, gathering evidence against him took a lot of time and money, but thinking about him going to hell made it all seem worth it. I hated my husband that much. I didn't leave that house because I wanted to save on rent. It was also a part of my small pride, a determination not to lose. I planned to demand a security deposit for the divorce lawsuit from all the women involved, but it turned out my husband had pretended to be single. I thought he was the lowest of the low. However, one of the women he deceived reported his misdeeds to the company where he worked. As a result, he was demoted to a minor subsidiary and, with his pride wounded, he quit the company. It seemed the matter with the women was settled through settlements. I heard it cost a pretty penny. I thought, serves him right, from the bottom of my heart. Eventually, our divorce was successfully finalized. I made sure he paid the full amount I had asked for the divorce security deposit. The source of the money? He had to sell his stocks and savings from before we were married, and it still wasn't enough. Most of it was paid by Mia, my ex-mother-in-law. Despite receiving a substantial amount from her ex-husband during their divorce, it seemed she had nearly run out of money. She must have been shocked to see her son in such a mess after she got out of the hospital. Good riddance. By the way, Mia's stomach pain turned out to be appendicitis, not food poisoning. Seems like her stomach is just as unbelievable as ever. Mia always focused on academic credentials, but I thought she should have taught her son other important lessons. As for my ex-husband, his final choice of woman was, disgustingly, a colleague from my workplace. It was the same married colleague who kept nagging me. "Aren't you going to have kids?" Having an affair with someone else's husband while being married herself, how foolish. I made sure to demand a security deposit from her. But this colleague hadn't realized she was just one of many, and their relationship ended quickly. It seems she got divorced too. Once, on my way to work, I saw my ex-husband and Nia in shabby clothes. The once handsome man had lost his hair due to stress, looking like a defeated samurai. Almost unrecognizable, appearing in his 50s. Mia, once so plump, had lost a lot of weight. They both looked like they were living on the streets. It was none of my business. As for me, I continued working but requested a transfer to an affiliate company. Thankfully, my take-home pay remained the same, and I continued my previous lifestyle. One thing has changed. When I come home and say, "I'm back," 2 adorable cats come to greet me, twining around my feet.
Wait a bit, I'll feed you soon.
A friend was looking for a home for 2 sibling cats, and I finally got my long-desired pets. For them, I moved to a pet-friendly apartment. Every day is now a storm of affection. For now, I've had enough of marriage. I plan to spend my days happily with these cute cats.
Hey, mister. I'm the daughter of this company's owner, all right? My dad's the boss. Don't lump me with these lowly, poor employees.
Surprised by both her vulgarity and her true identity, my dad paused with a shocked expression, then cleared his throat softly. Meanwhile, Carol wore a smug look, as if she had just made a grand statement. Remembering that Dad originally came to our company for business, I realized we couldn't afford to cause any more trouble. So I tried to apologize to Carol. Just then, Dad spoke in a low voice.
"So, the lower ranks are the poor employees, huh? Maybe it's time to revise the salary structure."
He muttered this almost to himself.
"What? Are you mocking me? Fine. Mister, what's your name? Which subcontractor do you work for? I'll tell Dad about you."
It might just be your fault if the company goes under,
Carol retorted. Dad, looking slightly puzzled, thought for a moment before breaking into a smile. Then, let's go say hello to the boss. Lenore and the others, come along. Everyone except Dad looked shocked, but he walked ahead. Not wanting to be left behind, we hurried after him. My name is Lenore. I'm a hardworking 28-year-old. The company I work for is quite large, and I work tirelessly every day. My dad, concerned about me, contacts me once a week, but I always reply with, "Don't worry," trying to reassure him, almost forcibly. His concern is probably because he wants to recruit me to his company. 7 years ago, when I was still a college student, I was busy with job hunting every day to secure a job offer. Dad, who runs his own company, once invited me to join his company, saying, "Why bother with job hunting? You can just come work for my company." It's not that I didn't want to go to his company, but I didn't want to rely on such connections. I wanted to succeed on my own merit. And I wanted to work alongside him, as an equal, once I was fully competent at my job. I explained this and persuaded him. Reluctantly, he agreed, and I joined my current company. It's been 6 years since I started working here. Now, I have more responsibilities, and I even have subordinates. And it's our busy season. It's not uncommon for our department heads to be absent from the office for an entire day during this time, and sometimes I can't even sit at my desk for more than 30 minutes. We're that busy. I don't have the luxury of constantly worrying about Dad's feelings. Today, I've been bustling around the office since morning. Even amidst the rush, a shrill voice caught my ear as I passed by a meeting room, prompting me to stop. The door was slightly ajar, and peering inside, I saw a woman with a tray bowing her head before another woman who sat arrogantly, berating her.
"How many times do I have to tell you? I don't like coffee, I want Coke."
It seemed the employee had brought the wrong beverage. The angry woman looked younger than me, but whose guest was she? A frequent complainer, perhaps? It's disgraceful to fuss over complimentary beverages. I wondered what her parents would think. Just as I was about to open the door and intervene. Ah, there she goes again. I heard a voice behind me. Turning around, I saw my colleague Sissy peeking into the room. "You scared me. Don't just start talking out of nowhere." I chided her in a whisper, careful not to be overheard.
"Sorry, but it's unexpected to see you peeking, Lenore,"
she said with a mischievous grin. Sissy is only a year younger than me, even though she's my subordinate. We get along well and often go out for drinks. Professionally, she's my subordinate, but in our private lives, we're like friends.
I wasn't peeking. "By the way, Sissy, do you know who that woman is?"
I asked.
"Oh, she's quite notorious around here,"
Sissy replied with a slight smirk.
"That's Carol, the boss's only daughter."
His daughter? But why is she here? I inquired, puzzled. She occasionally comes to play around like this, throwing her weight around with the staff. No one dares to contradict her because she's the boss's daughter. As Sissy explained, Carol continued to berate the employee.
"Go buy me a Coke. What's your name? I'll tell Dad,"
she shouted. I want to help that employee, my colleague, but I hesitated. "Let's get back to work for now, Lenore," Sissy suggested. "Poor thing, we don't keep Coke for guests." Sissy gently closed the meeting room door, holding the handle that I was gripping. She enjoys bossing the staff around like this. She never actually reports anyone. Last week, it was ginger ale. "You have work to do, Lenore. She's not worth your time." Her words reminded me of the tasks I had to complete. Sissy, are you free now? Want to come to the warehouse with me?"
"Sure. I was actually looking for you. I have some business there too."
We left the meeting room, the shouts still echoing, with heavy hearts. Why does Carol come here to play? She should be having fun with friends. She looks college-aged. I pondered aloud while checking inventory in the warehouse. Apparently, she's joining the company next year. She's been visiting frequently for that. You'd think she'd rather be with friends, but she doesn't seem to have many. Sissy commented. True. I mused, feeling uneasy about Carol. Shouldn't she value the employees who support her family's business? Especially since they'll be her coworkers and supervisors next year? It's not right to treat them as mere playthings. Does she not realize she's embarrassing her parents? As I pondered these things, the pressure of my pen on the inventory notes inadvertently grew stronger. Noticing this, Sissy glanced at my notes. I get why you're angry, Lenore. She's exactly the type of person you dislike the most, she said with a wry smile. That's true, but what really irks me is the boss and the executives who say nothing. They should reprimand her for such behavior. Apparently, she's an overindulged child, born late in her father's life. Sissy explained with a gentle smile, easing me back into work mode. Thanks to her, I managed to finish the warehouse work surprisingly quickly. Exhausted from the day, I was heading home when my mobile phone rang. It was a message from Dad. Lenore, I'm coming to your company tomorrow for a business deal. If you're free, I'd like to see you. I was surprised. Dad was visiting my office? The company I work for is in the same industry as his company, and I knew they were connected, but it was the first time he had shown his face at my company in the 6 years I've been working there. I hoped to see him, but it really depended on timing, so I just replied, If I'm free, I'll come and see you. Let me know. And then closed the message. The next day, my office was busy, but things started to calm down by lunchtime. While eating, I received a message from Dad. I'll be at your company soon. I checked the time and decided to wait for him outside. As I got up, Sissy, sitting next to me, asked, Where are you rushing off to, Lenore? It's still lunch break. Oh, my dad is visiting the office today. I thought I'd go say hi since it's been a while. What? Can I come too, just to greet him? She asked excitedly. Sure, let's go together, I agreed. Sissy followed me, checking her reflection in the window and fixing her hair. I was pleased to have such an eager subordinate. While Sissy and I waited for my dad at the entrance. Is that him? She suddenly pointed to a taxi. I shook my head. Steve would have driven his own car rather than take a taxi. As we looked in the opposite direction, a shrill voice called out, Nice of you to meet me here. I pretended not to hear, but Sissy made a disgusted face as if to say this is the worst. Hey, you over there, where are you looking? I'm right here. I turned around, frustrated. And there was Carol. She was dressed inappropriately for the office, in a flouncy miniskirt and casual t-shirt, clacking her heels as she walked towards us. Excuse me, but you're mistaken. We're waiting for someone else here, I said, looking away again. In an ear-piercing tone, Carol shouted, What's with that attitude? Aren't you an employee here? Apologize right now. Sissy looked at me with a panicked expression. Yes, I'm an employee. But why should I apologize? I responded calmly. What? Carol seemed even more incensed by this. You, a lowly employee, think you can talk to me like that? Really, old lady? Well, a company needs its lowly employees, doesn't it? And for your information, I'm only 28, not an old lady. Carol burst into laughter at my reply. 28? You look much older. Is it hard being poor? I pity you, she said, pointing at me mockingly. I was furious, but I couldn't do much since she was the boss's daughter. I had to stand there, seething in silence, as she laughed. Then, Hey, Lenore! Long time no see! I heard a voice from afar. Approaching us was Dad, a slightly overweight, ordinary-looking man in a suit, waving his hand. Who's that weird guy? Hilarious, Carol said, looking at him and laughing. That was the last straw for me.
Excuse me, that's rude.
I raised my voice.
What? Who are you yelling at?
Carol yelled back. What's going on? Are you all friends? Unaware of the situation, Dad smiled at me kindly.
What? As if I would be friends with these people.
Carol snapped at him, switching her target from me to him. Dad's expression changed immediately.
How rude to say these people when you are colleagues who work together.
He was right, but Carol wasn't convinced.
Listen, old man. I'm the daughter of this company's owner. My dad is the boss. Don't lump me with these lowly, poor employees.
Dad looked shocked by Carol's rudeness and her identity, then cleared his throat softly. Meanwhile, Carol looked smug, as if she had just triumphed. Remembering that Dad originally came to our company for business, I realized we couldn't afford to cause any more trouble. So I tried to apologize to Carol. But at that moment, Dad spoke in a low voice.
So, the lower ranks are the poor employees, huh? Maybe it's time to revise the salary structure.
He muttered this to himself.
What? Are you mocking me? Fine. Mister, what's your name? Which subcontracting company are you from? I'll tell my dad about you. You might just ruin the company.
Carol spat out. Dad, looking puzzled, thought for a moment before smiling. Well then, let's go greet the boss. Lenore and the others, come along. The only one unfazed by the situation was Dad, who had already started walking ahead. Not wanting to be left behind, we quickly followed him. We reached the boss's office, and Dad entered first. Sissy and I followed, tense. Carol, pushing past us, rushed to her father.
Dad! This man, he...
She began to tattle immediately. Before Carol could finish, her father spoke loudly.
This man? Who are you talking to?
I'm sorry, Steve.
My daughter lacks manners.
He shot Carol a sharp look to silence her, then turned to us with a smile.
Ah, it's your daughter with you today?
Did you know about me? I asked, surprised. Dad sat down on a sofa.
Wait, Dad.
Carol protested. Dad gave me a kind look, then turned his sharp gaze to the boss.
Earlier, your daughter called my daughter and her colleague lowly, poor employees.
What's this about? The boss's face tightened.
Well, they deserved it. They were rude to me, just low-end employees.
Carol continued in her shrill voice.
What?
The boss turned pale and shouted angrily at Carol.
What are you saying? This lady is the daughter of a valued client, and this man is her father and the current boss. Eh?
Carol's face turned pale, realizing the gravity of her actions. To think such a large company still treats its employees as poor. You've become quite the boss, haven't you? If your employees are poor, shouldn't the company be ashamed? The boss was sweating profusely. I can't leave my daughter in such a place. She'll resign today. When the boss heard that, he immediately apologized to my dad and said,
I'm terribly sorry. I've heard your daughter is very skilled. Please, not resignation. And you apologize to him.
Wait, Dad. What's going on? I whispered to him.
I had let the boss know that you were employed here, to look out for you. As I knew that you don't like the preferential treatment, I told him just to keep an eye out.
Ignoring the boss and his daughter, Steve explained kindly.
But I never thought this company would treat its employees like slaves. Lenore, you can quit now. You've done well here for 6 years. Come work for me.
That's sudden. I can't just leave in the middle of the busy season. I protested. Dad seemed a bit exasperated by my response, but he eventually agreed. All right, if you insist. After this busy season, come work for my company. And you, it must be uncomfortable staying here after this. What do you say? The industry is the same. He kindly offered this to Sissy.
Yes, absolutely.
Sissy replied immediately. Wait, Sissy. I haven't decided yet.
I protested. Sissy looked at me quizzically. Why not? Your dad's company is one of the elite in the country, and you're his daughter. Why wouldn't you go? Dad nodded in agreement with Sissy's words. I don't want to join his company just because of connections. I know Dad's company is big, but I didn't want to take the easy way. I explained. Sissy smiled happily. That's so like you, Lenore. And she continued. Lenore's father, I'm Sissy. I really appreciate that I can work with her. She is an outstanding boss. As she praised me, Dad smiled and sobbed along. I felt embarrassed and urged Dad to continue. Dad, the boss is still. Ah, right, forgot about that. Sorry, Sissy, we'll talk later. Yes. Sissy cheerfully replied. Now, boss, no need to apologize anymore. Let's end our business dealings here. As my dad finally addressed to him, he was surprised and looked up at Dad. That would be a great loss for us. I'm truly sorry. No, it's fine. This isn't because of the disrespectful behavior towards them. Then why? He asked. Please guide me. I'll improve anything. I'll definitely make improvements. The company would suffer a huge blow if they lost their dealings with Dad. That's why the boss kept apologizing repeatedly. Improvement is impossible. Once trust is lost, it can't be regained. You say employees are your priority, yet your daughter treats them like slaves. Did you think I wouldn't hear about it? I'm not sure. Even from the side, I can see Carol turned pale. I could demote you from the boss, but should I? Dad asked. Please, forgive me. The boss pleaded. Hey, Dad. Just because you're a valued client, you can't really do that, can you? I asked. I can. Dad replied with a smile, indicating he really had the power. I don't inquire deeply into the relationship between the boss and Dad, but Dad might be more powerful in this industry than I thought. With this realization, the both attitudes of my dad and the boss make sense. I won't go that far since I'm not a child, but I will end our contract. Thank you for your business. With that, he stood up, straightening his suit. Please, I'm begging you. Just for this term, please reconsider. How about a promotion for your daughter? No, a raise. She can even become an executive right now. Dad exclamation question mark, but you said I would start from manager because of how it looks to others. An immediate promotion to executive is impossible. At that moment, my dad's look at the two changed to one of disdain. And the boss's pleading eyes were fixed squarely on Carol. Despite this, Carol still seemed dissatisfied with the difference between what her father had said about my position and her own treatment. I almost felt sorry for the boss with such an oblivious daughter. But I had reached my limit and couldn't hold back anymore. You plan to put a woman who called us lowly, poor employees, and was rude to Dad in a position of authority? I blurted out. Well, my daughter doesn't understand because she hasn't experienced the real world yet. She'll learn to respect others through the hardships of society. Respecting others has nothing to do with social experience. I interjected, louder than I intended. Carol looked up, startled, and I addressed her. A company cannot function without its employees. Even someone who has never been an executive, like me, understands this. But you don't. Why? How would I know that? Carol seemed genuinely clueless. Do you think being a daughter of privilege puts you above others? Of course. I'm from a different upbringing. It's not my decision, it's God's. To Carol's nonsensical reply, I forced a smile. Then, as the daughter of this company's boss, I'm higher than you, right? You'll listen to me? My smile was apparently so frightening that Sissy later told me it scared Carol, whose composure vanished. Fine, what do you want? This company is not your playground. If you want to play, go find your college friends. Carol hung her head in shame, her face flushed.
Sissy quietly applauded me.
Well said. That's my daughter.
Dad laughed heartily. After that, Sissy and I spent a hectic month at work. But the second half of the busy season was unexpectedly calm. Each time our supervisors and colleagues looked puzzled, Sissy and I exchanged knowing smiles. A month later, Sissy and I resigned and joined my dad's company. Our previous company began to decline drastically. Rumors quickly spread that the abrupt termination of the contract with a major firm was to blame, prompting other companies to reconsider their dealings. Sales plummeted by 40%, most employees started job hunting, and the company's decline accelerated. The general meeting decided the crisis was due to the boss's fault, and he was ousted. His brother is now trying to rebuild the company. According to Dad, this brother is well respected. The company might be reborn into something better. On the condition that the former boss's family no longer be involved, Dad began moves to restart dealings with them. I also heard from Dad that the former boss's family began to lose their possessions, eventually selling their house. I don't know where they went, but I doubt a family accustomed to such wealth could adapt to normal life. In fact, Carol reportedly got a job at a grocery store, acted arrogantly to customers, got into an argument, and was fired within hours, becoming somewhat of a legend. In my personal life, I managed to convince Dad to let me start as a regular employee instead of directly becoming an executive. However, I'm aware that I'll eventually take over the company. So, I balance my everyday tasks with assisting the executive team. Constantly amazed by their innovative ideas that never occur to me, sometimes feeling overwhelmed. But every time I feel like my head is about to explode, Sissy is there by my side, saying,
Lenore, let's finish this task first. Then we can decide the priority for the next ones.
Her support keeps me grounded. Sometimes the pressure of being the boss's daughter feels crushing, but with Sissy around, I can stay confident and cope. Interestingly, Dad also likes Sissy, and sometimes the three of us go out for drinks. Every time Dad gets tipsy and tells this joke,
Lenore will be the next president, and Sissy the next executive officer. Don't even think about getting married and retiring, you too.
He often tells this story laughingly. However, what Dad doesn't know is that I'm secretly in a relationship. My desire to get married is still a secret from Dad.